everybody. My name is Mistress Gwyneth Banfhidhleir. I am a laurel, a pelican, a companion of the Cavendish knot here in the Middle Kingdom. The topic I'm going to be talking tonight is feeding fencers. To get good, you have to eat good. And this basically ties along with some of the presentations the Masters of Defense have been presenting for the past several months on how to get good. And this sort of ties in with it, and I'll be discussing that in a little bit here. So anyway, a little bit about myself. Slide 2. There we go. I've been in the SCA since 1982. I started at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, as a freshman. I've been a resident of the Middle Kingdom my entire SCA career, between the Barony of the Middle Marches, which is central and southeastern Ohio, Barony of the Flaming Griffin, which is southwestern Ohio, and March of the Phoenix, which is Cincinnati and northern Kentucky. As far as my fencing career goes, I have been a fencer since 2011 here in the Middle Kingdom, and I've been a recipient of the Cavendish Knot, a participant of our Middle Kingdom 1000 Bout Challenge, which was a self-directed challenge event designed to improve prowess and increase your network in the rapier community. I'm also a member of one of the premier members of our baronial guard, our baronial rapier guard. As I previously stated, I'm a laurel in cooking. I've been feeding fighters, fencers, everybody for quite some time. And I'm also a pelican regarding logistics, project management, things like that. In addition to my fencing, I like a variety of different physical activities. One of which includes ballroom dance. I love ballroom dancing. I do belly dance, and my primary cross training activity currently is water aerobics. So this is sort of my sports background, as well as my some of my nutrition background as well. So this is where we're going to get started. And now this is one of the reasons I'm really interested about nutrition, specifically when it relates to sports and the SCA, athletic activities in the SCA, is back in 2018, I was in a tournament in the Middle Kingdom, and this tournament is known as the Tournament of Maidens. It is one of our premier events for rapier in our kingdom. We have visitors from other kingdoms come out, and it's very, prestigious, high visibility. A lot of people are there, and there's fighting all day long. Prior to this event, several months before that, I had been involved in a weight loss program that had limited caloric intake, and I dropped a lot of weight, which is great for me personally, right? I mean, I dropped weight, I felt good and everything like that. The day of the tournament was, the start of the first tournament of the day is what we've called the A-game tournament. That is the largest participation tournament we have. There's about 80 people in it. We had about 4 pools of 20. There's a lot of waiting, a lot of intermittent activity, and it took a couple hours to finish the entire pool for the tournament. I won about 50-50 in the tournament. So I won 10, about lost 10, but because it's such a high level tournament, I didn't advance to the next round for semifinals and all that. So I went back to my day area to rest. And after I got out of the tournament, usually afterwards you get kind of tired. Well, you're on a lot of adrenaline and everything like that. And once you stop doing the adrenaline, sort of like basically went into the basement. I crashed really hard and got chills. I was tired, exhausted, everything like that. Everything that could possibly happen to an athlete, not in a good way, happened to me. I was exhausted. So, but fortunately, I had some friends who got me some help, got what food I could to pretty much get myself to functioning level. I was, tired all day, but pretty much was done for the day. There were several tournaments that I really want to participate in and hang out, but I just didn't have the gas to do it. So that's a bummer for me. But what I found out, and this is an important lesson to me, is what I did find out is I did not have a plan for keeping my body adequately full. Now you find that kind of amusing since I know how to feed other people, but this is a different scale entirely, and it's a different type of activity level that involves scheduling, timing, and a little bit more planning other than spending the entire day feeding 100 people. This is basically feeding myself. I get it. Sure, I can cook well, I can feed the masses, but learning how to eat right was very much a important lesson for me. So after that, I set out to educate myself on how to fuel my particular machine here. This is what I'm here doing today, sort of passing on some of the things that I've learned about it, and hopefully you can learn something from it as well. I'll be presenting some of the components of SCA fencing that we cover in general and where nutrition falls into that. Different types of activity levels, because you know most of us have different types of activity for jobs, activities, things like that. So that's also a factor in nutrition planning. I'm going to discuss nutrition and performance as it relates to conditioning, which is basically the training you're not doing when you're fencing, you know, like weightlifting, aerobics, yoga, Pilates, anything like that. Training itself, which is actual practice and drilling. Competition, which are your tournament and melee events and things like that. And then recovering from these different activities. Another thing I'm going to cover is what I've just sort of came up with this idea a few weeks ago is snacking as a strategy. And it'll come to you later once I sort of lay out sort of the strategy when it comes to like snacking and keeping your energy levels level throughout the course of an event or a practice and everything like that. And of course, what goes along with nutrition is hydration, giving yourself you have enough adequate fluid intake with, you know, water, electrolytes, other materials like that, other ingredients that will help support your performance as well as your recovery, all that. Okay, so SCA fencing. Let's consider the scholarship that goes into what we have with fencing as it exists in the SCA. There is a tremendous body of work about most areas of fencing. We have people on a daily basis in Virtual Academy of the Rapier and other activities discuss equipment, gear, swords, armor, cloth armor, anything like that, helmets, masks, stuff like that. Education, people who provide you the historical components of fencing, either historical or tactical or strategic components of fencing. You've got people like Master Aaron Harper, Master Remy, other people discussing specifics regarding certain fencing masters in history, fencing strategies, fencing education, fencing, you know, sort of curriculums, things like that. There's also there's education regarding conditioning, how to condition yourself to actually do what we do. People involving with cross training, physical training, getting your body adequately prepared to support your activity, your fencing activity. Training, also how to run effective practices, what types of things you should be doing with practice drills, things like that. And then psychology, which covers the sort of the mind behind fencing, the strategies regarding attitude, performance, mindset, everything like that related to that. What I've noticed throughout all of this is a lack. I would say it's not that it's unheard of, but where nutrition plays into this. And nutrition is as much a component to competition, to training, to everything like that, as any other component of fencing. In other words, as the masters say, you have to get good. And in my case, I feel in order to get good, you have to eat good. I know that's not correct grammar, but it goes along with the phrase and all that. So anyway, when I'm talking about athletic performance, I'm talking about how nutrition affects it. So athletic performance is enhanced by really is optimal nutrition. Our bodies are very complex machines. They need the right type of fuel for the best performance that you can provide. You have more energy with the right nutritional plan. You have more energy, less fatigue, and all that. It helps you sustain your energy levels throughout the day, and anything that doesn't give you the best fuel, improper nutrition, hydration, is going to lead to fatigue. You're going to tire out easier during a tournament or during war, during a day, lead to poor performance and everything like that. You end up tired, your muscles cramp up, everything like that. It's no fun whatsoever. So this kind of fatigue leads to intestinal distress, muscular distress, like I said, cramping, and then possibly some form of injury, because if you're feeling not well, you're feeling dizzy, dehydrated, something like that, you're not going to perform as well, and you have a risk of possibly getting injured during the tournament by not paying attention or just by pure fatigue, everything like that. So what I've come to know about fencing, our particular sport itself, is it is a short and fast interval sport. This is different from armored combat. That's what I view as more of a power sport because there's more strength involved. Ours involves more agility, endurance, going through bear pit tournaments, agility with maneuverability with the swords, footwork, and everything like that. Speed as how fast you use your sword, and only a little bit of power because we know how hard you need to hit. As we do monitor our calibration, we don't need a lot of power behind our strikes, but we do need power in order to move our bodies forward and everything like that. So having a plan around that type of activity, I think is important versus other types of activities. And I know there's lots of strategies out there regarding that. So regarding nutrition, what I've come to find is our food choices impact our durability of our particular musculoskeletal system. Everyone is built differently, so everyone is going to respond differently. What I'm going to design for myself because I'm an older athlete, older athlete with a different frame than most people. I've got a larger frame. I carry more weight. My metabolism is different from other people, so everyone's going to respond differently. There is no one cookie cutter method. There's differences in age, agility, gender, everything like that. What's important is to get to know what you best respond to regarding what sustains you during a typical tournament or anything like that. Find out what nutrition will work best for you. I know in my case, this sort of ties into my snacking strategy. I function better if I'm having smaller meals throughout the day rather than one large meal at the beginning of the day and then nothing throughout the day until the very end. I perform better if I have something a little more consistent but smaller as opposed to something larger and then smaller and much smaller at the end and all that. What I've also found out is your body, listening to your body, it's going to signal for nutrition every 3 hours or so. You're going to get that little, you get that mid-afternoon, sort of mid-morning, coffee break time for a snack or something like that, or mid-afternoon, say you have your lunch around noon. Usually in my case, if I'm eating lunch around noon, around 3:30, my body's had time to process that and the blood sugar is going down a little bit and it's saying, hey, it's time for a snack. Okay, well, I know that well enough that I can do that. Along with the nutrition is what your body's also doing at the same time, which is generating adrenaline to help you propel and move forward. The adrenaline response to your activity, everything like that. Eventually that will wear off. And there are gender differences in adrenaline usage. Usually with men, with males, it goes up higher. Men in general can turn off and on, their performance fairly quickly. They can ramp up, ramp down, pretty much up and down like that. With women, there's been studies demonstrating that women take time to warm up. they have time, they need to take the time to really get their system going in order to maintain the same type of adrenaline level. Now, it's not going to go up and down like most men do. It's going to go up and sort of go sort of at a level for a while, and then it's going to come down. So the sustainability of the adrenaline that is vastly different between men and women and all that. And then, you know, once that's done, once that adrenaline is gone, it's pretty apparent what's going to happen, you know, if you're not prepared to recover from it nutritionally. Like I said, when I was out of the tournament and I was done and I was just starting to sort of like just go downhill fast, I can feel myself just with the shakes. And what some runners, some people who do running, you know, marathons, 5Ks, 10Ks, things like that, it's what they call bonking. You know, all of a sudden you're gonna hit a wall and it's like you're just done. And so you know, cyclists and other long distance kinds of athletes have different types of nutrition plans as well. I mentioned lifestyle activity impacting our nutrition. So for the most part, you know, I would say for the most part, a lot of us are very light, you know, do a lot of light activity. You know, they have, you know, like myself, I have a desk job. I work from home. I low physical effort during the day. So I've got leisure activities, watching television, gaming, you know, not all the gaming, but basically television, very low activity things. And I occasionally work out. This is something I need to work on in order to become a better developed athlete. I have plans in place to develop what I'm doing in order to support my fencing, which is where I'm going into cross training with swimming, aqua aerobics, dancing when I used to do before the pandemic hit. You know, I was I was doing ballroom dancing like 4 hours a week and all that. So I'm trying to move myself towards a more active physical activity, and that takes planning, dance, sports, working out, everything like that. A vigorous activity level is someone who works a very active job throughout the day. You know, someone who works construction, who's working in a lot of weight, who's doing a lot of, like, they could be a courier. They're on their feet a lot during a day. You know, even people like nurses who walk like miles a day just on their unit. They're also contrasting that with very highly active leisure activities. They're like, you know, active swimmers, cyclists, runners. You know, they're, you know, 10K, ultra, you know, marathon runners, long distance cyclists, things like that. That's going to impact your nutrition level. So what I'm going to throw a little bit of science at you. I know, it's kind of funny. So what I want to show is what our body's essentially doing here. So when you're looking at everything that we eat is going to fall into 3 categories, and you've probably seen numerous articles about proteins and carbs and fats and everything like that. Proteins are our building blocks for muscle growth, system maintenance, repairs, things like that. Carbohydrates, you know, sugars, simple sugars, complex carbohydrates, things like that. They're the main fuel for our energy. And then even fat is helping with cell membranes, hormone production, and activated fat-based nutrients. Excuse me. Does anyone have any questions so far? I'm sort of just moving along here. And you can feel free to unmute your phone unmute your line if you want to ask a question throughout this. So, really? Okay. Good. All right. Okay. So here's where I'm going into snacking as a strategy. So what I mean is, you know, not only is it important what to eat, you know, what to eat, you know, getting the right recipe combination of what's going to be good for your system, you know, whether you prefer a higher protein intake or you respond better to carbohydrates, or, you know, you carb load like 3 days before and you're all set to go and everything like that. Or you can function just as easily on a cup of coffee and a bag of Doritos. It really doesn't matter. It's basically how designing what's best for you.
Jeannie, real
Yeah,
quick, somebody in chat said, are you using your slides right now? So
yeah,
I'm
I should be.
assuming not.
I should
Did
be
you
using my slides. Yeah,
share screen? Perhaps you did not.
I did. I thought I did. Oh, hold on. Let me try. Now do you see it?
Yes.
There we go. Okay, let me, oh, you have to excuse me. I have just had a lightning bolt hit up beside me. Let me finish it back up. All right, oops. All right, so here I am discussing snacking as a strategy, if everyone can see that. Okay, what I'm talking about snacking as a strategy is basically you want to design a plan for even not just your activities, not your event activities for the day, but when you're training, when you go to fencing practice, when you're working out, the timing of when you eat will impact how well you do. You'll have time for the body to process that process your food in a manner so that you are sustained throughout your activity. Larger meals, like if you have like a big, if you're used to having like a big dinner or something like that, and you go to practice, it's going to take a larger time to process, and you're going to kind of feel it. I know when I've, had a large dinner before I go to practice or something like that, it's going to stick with me throughout the evening, and it's going to be like this big heavy lump in my stomach, and it's no fun, So I won't be as efficient with my energy processing as I would be if I had just had cut the meal in half, have it earlier, say practice is at 7 o'clock and I eat dinner about 5. That gives it a little bit of time to digest, get through my system, make sure the glucose is working and everything like that. And then throughout the practice, I can, keep hydrated, maybe grab some snacks, peanuts, pretzels, trail mix, things like that. Something to help provide your consistent fuel throughout the day. It's also important to make something portable. I was, for example, I was on a royal retinue for William and Isolde, our previous king and queen of the Middle Kingdom, several years ago, and I was their morale officer, which basically I made sure that people on staff ate on a regular basis. Now, they do not have time to sit down and eat lunch, right? So because they're running around doing the thing. So I basically made portable Lunchables, for lack of a better word. Back of a little word, I basically just made sure that they had something to eat so that they, when they're running around doing their service for the day and their particular activities, that they will make sure that they'll have something in their stomach to eat throughout the day. So that I made sure they had like a chicken wrap, some fruit, bottled water, things like that, something to keep them fueled throughout the day. And this is sort of like I said, when to eat is important as what to eat. This is sort of the sweet spot, for lack of a better word, of balancing your caloric intake versus your calorie burning. This is important like that. So let me see here. Next slide here. What I was previously saying with practice sessions, have a good snack before you go to practice. Basically focusing on more carbs and protein, and avoid high fat, and drink fluids, and drink fluids while you're eating, and keeping fluids up, because that will maintain, the fluids will pass through your system faster than more solid food that takes longer to digest. And any factors relating to that include, how long you're going to be doing this, how long practice is, how long the event is, what kind of activity you're going to be doing. Are you going to be doing like very vigorous bear pit style drilling, going hard, fast, long, things like that? Are you going to be doing just regular, simple drills, which take less effort, more concentration, obviously, but less effort? And also what your climate conditions are. For example, whether you have an outdoor practice out during the summer where you've got heat, humidity, weather to deal with, or if you're indoors where you've got, it's more of a controlled environment. But even then, you can still get overheated inside, for if you don't, eat right or drink right or overexert yourself too much. So you have to be mindful of that. Make sure you take breaks, make sure you drink water, and all that. Uh, so, next slide. All right. With conditioning, what I'm talking about with conditioning is some of the cross training that people do during training for fencing. That's basically to build your endurance for performance, building your strength, developing your muscle memory through drills, and all that, improving your performance, and reducing injury. And conditioning regarding fencing involves fencing-specific exercises like drills, like anything that will support, fencing, your fencing activities, footwork drills. This is why I do ballroom dance, because it makes me more agile. Dancing's made me a better fencer. Fencing's made me a better dancer. It basically helps me get more comfortable in my own skin. And those are what I call like transferable exercises. So even, getting more comfortable on my feet was very important to improving my footwork in the fencing field and all that. And then with your nutritional needs with conditioning is how long you're going to be doing the activity and type of workout session you're doing. Usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I go to the pool. So I'm doing high intensity interval training in the pool. I do water aerobics. I still, that's usually a 45-minute session, but even an hour or so ahead of time, I'm getting a light snack so that, even in the water, I'm going to get thirsty and hungry and everything like that. So I'm going to basically make sure that I have something to eat before that. And then when I'm done, I'm ready for dinner. I'm ready for a larger meal to help sort of recover what I've just done and all that. With competition, so like I said, having a balanced meal a few hours before the competition might mean if the tournament starts at 10 o'clock, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, you're going to be getting up early for breakfast or whatever you need to do. Usually easily digestible carbs, things like oatmeal, cereal, things like that. I would skip the donuts, but you can have the donut later. High fat kind of things or high fiber are going to impact your digestion a little bit. Having your smaller stacks throughout the day will be helpful. Having proteins, cheeses, nuts, things like that, nut butters. Maintain your hydration levels. And then when it comes to what is known as carb loading, this is something, when my brother played football in high school, usually the football teams had their spaghetti dinner Thursday night. So they had these huge plates of spaghetti and meatballs and everything like that. Because by Friday night, that energy, those nutrients will have been processed enough for them to have it ready for them to for the football game and all that. And a thing regarding food safety, regarding snacking, is making sure when you are snacking, make sure it's from sources you trust. Even some of those lovely sideboards that have been out all day, some of them may be out a little too long, so I would be wary of some of those things. So I would be careful about that. Let's see here. Dun, 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 dun. What else? So afterwards, after you've done really well in the tournament and all that, and you've had a great day, and no, let's say you've won the tournament. So you've won the tournament, and you've got, you go out for ice cream and sprinkles and everything like that, because sprinkles are for winners. So after your training sessions, it's important to refuel, because you've just expended all this energy, and you need to replenish your system, your muscles, the fuel that they need, regenerate skeletal muscle tissue with your good proteins, amino acids, reinforce all the immune functions, your nervous systems with tasty, colorful foods, fruits, veggies, grains, good proteins, good oils, things like that, and then rehydrate to replace the fluids and the electrolytes you've lost throughout the day. So with one of the events I've gone to here in the Middle Kingdom, we have regional academies of defense, and these events are usually all day education sessions. Yeah, we were discussing techniques, strategies, there's sessions on drilling, things like that. There's a lot of activity throughout the day, not necessarily tournaments, but there's still some sort of level of activity. So this is sort of basically making sure that you have to, like, throughout the day, making sure you're continuously snacking, get a lunch break, everything like that. Well, at one of these academies of defense was in what we know as, here in the Mid-Realm, as the Constellation region. This is Indiana. So Southern Indiana, the group there, they hosted their annual Constellation Academy, what's called Constellation Academy of Defense, also known as CAD. So for Feast, the feast was cooked by some of the local fencers and all that. And they did a themed feast where everything was served on a stick. It was fantastic. So that was enjoyable. Feast on a stick. It was so thematically appropriate. It was really funny. So you had portable meats, cheeses, fruits, plenty of beverages. It was a great time. So fantastic, fantastic theme for a feast, especially with a bunch of hungry fencers and all that. Along with having a good snack strategy is you want to make, like I said, you want to make some good choices. And I know not all the fencers out there, are cooks. They're kind of focused on fencing. So I get that. I totally understand that. I'm just one of those rare birds that can do both, cook and fence and all that. Not at the same time, but I know how to cook things. There's also Master Illidor, who's another fantastic cooking laurel, everything like that. She does some tasty things as well. I've seen households do tremendous, delicious sideboards at the tourney list and everything like that. But if you say you don't have the cooking gene and you really do want to do something really healthy for yourself, there are zero effort, no prep options you can do. Like, just hit the grocery store, go to the deli, grab yourself some sliced meats, some cheeses, some pita bread, get some nuts and fruit, beverages, fruit juices, things like that. Moderate effort, you can, cook yourself, make some, sort of grab and go portable meals like little meat pies or things like that. If you want to go really high effort, I would encourage negotiating with a foodie to do it for you. Get in with a household who has a tremendous amount of food and hospitality and everything like that, and, get in their good graces and they will take care of you as well. Also, there are some really good events that have tremendous hospitality for fencers, or any armored combatants, fencers, anyone who's on the list field. And for those who have been to Gulf Wars, Trimaris hosts a tremendously generous what they call the commissary, and they spend months ahead of time fundraising, planning for that, prepping for that. I'm sure Alexis has seen that as well. So what they usually have is, again, portable food. They have vat of chicken soup out there with they have chicken soup. They've got fruits, vegetables, carrots, peanut butter sandwiches, peanut butter and bacon, things that are salty, crunchy, have electrolytes in them. I mean, chicken soup is a great, transport method for electrolytes, because it's already liquid. It's already liquid. It's got the vitamins, the nutrients, the salt, everything like that, the liquid to help hydrate you, and it will go into your system almost immediately and all that. Some other ideas here are some recovery snack ideas. These are obtained from the U.S. Olympic Committee. They do have a nutrition component to their training as well. So you can have some different ideas for recovery and a plan. So if you know how much food you might need, this sort of breaks it down into portions. Like, if you need a couple hard-boiled eggs will get you through the morning. That'll be great. A little bit of cottage cheese, a little bit of deli meat. Chocolate milk is always a good source. You know, because you've got your proteins, your lactose, your dairy, and your sugar to help, you know, transport the nutrients throughout the system. Wraps I've talked about, applesauce, good carbs like fresh fruit, dried fruit, fruit juice, things like that. And some of these ideas hopefully will help, you know, as you build your lunch kit for the day, giving you some of these ideas, making sure they're portable and all that. So this covers a lot of the nutrition ideas that I've sort of come up with over time, regarding nutrition plans, you know, the types of foods to eat, when to eat them, why to eat them, and all that, and in some cases how as well, and also sources for levels of effort. If you, like I said, grab and go option, you know, moderate cooking options if you want to cook, or, you know, knowing what to look for when you're, you know, hanging out in an event at a sideboard and all that, as well as ideas for providing nutrition, you know, recovery, you know, liquids, snacks, everything like that for the populace and all that. So with nutrition also comes hydration. And it's essential for every body process, even more so during exercise, because you know, your body's, you know, working, it's heating up, it's releasing nutrients through sweat and aspiration and all that, and digestion. So you even need to keep hydrated, even more so during exercise. Your regular fluid intake at regular intervals before and any sign of thirst. If you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. So it's important to have water bottles on, you know, with your kit, everything like that, just so you're adequately prepared. You know, even a little bit of dehydration is going to reduce your aerobic capability and all that, and you get distracted. As you get more dehydrated, you're starting to think about being thirsty. It's like, oh, I'm really thirsty. I really need to stop and take a drink. And then you just that sort of starts consuming your mind about, oh my, I'm so thirsty. I need to stop and take a drink and stop and take a drink. And all the while you're still in the tournament and you're kind of distracted. So, you know, there's what you got to deal with. Now on the opposite side of hydration is there's a thing called overhydration, also called hyponatremia, which is basically you have too much water in your system with not enough nutrients in your bloodstream, and so all of your electrolytes have been flushed out and you're pretty much running on empty there. So that's something to be aware of. You can look it up and see what causes it and what you can do to be prepared for it and all that. So those, I'm going to stop sharing here, and so you can see my face again. Hi. And all that. So I would like to invite people to either put, you know, if they have additional questions or chats I've missed. Oh, here we go. Dun, dun, dun. Sorry. Dun, dun, dun. Solid ratio of traditional water and electrolyte replenishers, pickles, pickle juice, and Gatorade that fits most people. That's a good question, Antonio. I don't know. What I've usually seen here is we cut, at least with Gatorade, you know, it's usually cut in half. You know, you take your typical bottle, you know, 32-ounce bottle of Gatorade and add basically the same amount of water in it. So you have like a half gallon of diluted Gatorade. And that's usually a fairly good ratio. Some people don't respond well to Gatorade, you know, because of some of the chemicals in it. I've seen other nutritional supplements, other drink supplements that are more fruit-based. There's a product called Scratch Labs, called Scratch. It's a fruit, basically it's a pure fruit powder. It's like dehydrated raspberries or limes or lemons or anything like that. There's no extra like propylene glycol or artificial sweeteners, anything. It's just pure, basically fruit and fructose, and that's pretty much it. And that some people respond better to that than what you're going to get out of Gatorade. It really just depends. Like some people are allergic to, artificial sweeteners, or they have a condition that prevents them from processing artificial sweeteners versus natural sugars. It's going to depend. I really don't have the medical background to do the math regarding ratios, but that's what we got here. But pickle juice is pretty tasty too. I mean, I've seen lately freezer pops of nothing but pickle juice. They just basically, you can buy them commercially now, like like pickle popsicles. They're kind of tasty. I know also at some events, they bring out a giant cooler full of freezy pops, for the combatants out on the field, during like breaks and things like that. They have guardian, these angels just come down upon the heavens and dispense forth freezy pops, and it's a fun thing and all that. So um, fencing and Trimaris. Wow. Get used to it. I've been to Trimaris once for an event, and that was in the spring. It was in February, but it was still hot for me because I was coming from Ohio, and up there it was like 3 degrees. So I would say you have to condition your hydration as well as maintain your, basically as you're training, acclimating is important. So basically train, hydrate all the time. You just can't like walk out of your air conditioning, go straight to practice and expect to do well. You have to get used to working in that climate. I'm sure the Trimaris Rapier Enthusiast group has some ideas for that, especially for those who have recently moved from elsewhere, which are less, where you don't need to grow gills. If you say you're a kingdom that doesn't grow gills, unlike Trimaris, where they gills are provided with you. You were told to grow gills. I get it. Yeah. So it's basically getting used to it. Basically, you're gonna have to, like I said, climate does impact your nutrition and hydration. So bring as much water as you can. Hopefully the practice will be having a giant, cooler of water there with you, or bring your own. But it is something you basically have to train your body to, deal with that rather than just hop off the boat and here I am. It's like, no, I will. But yeah, I've also known people who've traveled from Ontario, Pacific Northwest, to Penzic, and there's such a climate shift between the two because the Seattle, Oregon area is so cool during the summers, and Pennsylvania heat humidity is oppressive. They don't adjust well, so it takes them time to adjust as well. I would also say the same thing for people who travel to the outlands, because you're dealing with high altitude. Even that level of oxygen will impact your training as well, which is why a lot of people, especially Olympic sports, train in Colorado, because if they could acclimate to the altitude, and the blood oxygen will be improved by having more oxygen because of the altitude, naturally in there. Train outside in the heat. Yeah. Intermittent fasting routine during competition season. Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good question. I know people who for some intermittent fasting works, because of their metabolism. They are, very at-risk diabetics, and so it works for them. Like I said, it might not work for everybody. What I did, when I crashed at that tournament a couple years ago, is I was on a very low-calorie diet, and then basically worked up to my normal caloric levels. I had dropped a lot of weight, but I also had a very small caloric intake, so it was burning fat. And I didn't plan accordingly. Basically, I was working with basically an empty gas tank, and I didn't plan for that. So I would, like I said, I'm not a medical professional when it comes to nutrition strategies like using intermittent fasting keto, paleo, anything like that. I just know what works for me is more of a foraging plan, you know, keeping a consistent level of caloric intake, like 5 meals of 300 calories a day is working for me now, rather than having like a heavy meal, like big giant steak dinner right before practice. So that works for me. But I know there are lots of sports dietitians and sports nutritionists out there who would be really, if you are seriously interested in coming up with a stronger strategy for that, I would suggest reaching out to them in the area, in whatever area you live in, everything like that. Train outside in the heat, Eleanor. Oh, good. Yes, absolutely. Um, so does anyone else have any questions, stories, everything like that? So I can't really see anything on, if there's anything in the live chat on Facebook. I don't see if anything out there really, but hopefully I have been able to provide you with some insight into the importance of incorporating a nutrition strategy as part of your overall fencing training plan, um, as an important component to it, along with educating yourself, getting good coaching, mentoring, working on your mental game, your strategies, your attitude, your health, upping your gear, getting good swords, things like that. Hoping having a plan like this will help you improve your performance, and you can stay out there stay on the field longer, stay in the tournament longer, things like that. So if anyone has any other questions or comments or ideas or anything like that, I'd be happy to hear them, or and all that. But I do thank you for your time. I know what time we're doing here. Oh, 10 till. Great. We still have some time. So I'm hoping to see you once the siege of Corona has lifted. I've missed everybody. I've missed going to Penzic. I miss Gulf Wars this year. I miss, I've gone to Adult Swim over in Ethelmark, and it's a fantastic event, and hopefully, we can see each other again soon, share stories, share snacks, things like that. So if, I'm really, that's about all I've got to cover here. I mean, I've got some sources, but here we go. There. Some sources. These are some of the sources I've used. There's a good book out there called Muscle Medicine if you're looking into, dealing with sports injuries. Muscle Medicine is a good one. If you're into weight training, like weightlifting, things like that, and learning about some of the more mechanics behind weightlifting, or any kind of weight training kind like that. Dr. Starrett, Becoming a Supple Leopard is a good source. Guy Windsor's always a great source of knowledge regarding, sword play, diets, things like that. I use the United States Olympic Committee site that had some fact sheets on sports nutrition. You can go to teamusa.org to look those up. Another book I used, which was one of my introductions to sports nutrition because I was friends with a bunch of marathon cyclists, is Feed Zone Portables, a cookbook for on-the-go food for athletes. And these basically give you ideas for making little grab-and-go snacks. You can make little like foil-wrapped rice cakes or 2-bite pies or things like that. These are from the originators of Scratch Labs, who did that, the drink I told you about, the Scratch, Scratch drink and everything like that. And this book, the audience for this book is basically for like professional cyclists, Tour de France, places like that, people who do centuries and things like that. But I believe there's a lot of good information here about calories burned per hour, estimating how to estimate calories burned per hour based on body weight and rate of speed, where your fuel is stored, fat, everything like that, calculating what we need to eat, things like that. There's some useful information out here. So there's some really good science out there behind some of the things I've been investigating, and I was like, I find it I'm excited. I find it fascinating. I think food is fascinating. I've been, a cook most of my life, and feeding people, it gives me great joy, and all that. So, and learning how to feed myself better is always a challenge because all of my energy usually goes out to feeding other people, and it's like, oh wait, I need to do that for myself too. That's great. Okay. So anyway, so thank you all for attending tonight. Antonio, yes, thank you for attending all the way from Atenvelt. Good luck. Feel free to find me on Facebook if you have questions or comments. I hang out in the Virtual Academy of the Rapier group. I'm out there. I belong to that. I belong to Mid-Realm Rapier Social Club. And all that. I'd be happy to chat up and talk about nutrition or food or anything of that nature and everything like that. So cheers. Have a great evening, everyone. And I hope to see you all soon. All right. Take care, everybody.